These two sections, one of them you already know everything about. You guys already know how to use quadratic formula. I think some people were actually using quadratic formula on the quiz like yesterday, which is fine, I guess. Even though it said, didn't tell you not to. But the other one is called completing the square. And what we're going to work on today is completing the square in the quadratic formula. We're going to spend a little bit more time on completing the square. It is, both of these methods are ways to solve quadratic systems. Or not systems, but quadratic equations. These will solve for your zeros. So if you hate factoring, which it's apparent that a lot of us do, both of these methods work. You can use completing the square if it is something that is factorable. You can use completing the square if it is not factorable. You can use completing the square to get imaginary answers. You can use them to get real answers. It does not matter. It's a very easy process to work through. So let's walk through it. Completing the square. Basically what you are doing is you're taking a trinomial, x squared plus 10x minus 3, and you want to find the zeros. In your mind right now, you're probably thinking, what times what is negative 3 that you can add together to get 10? There's nothing. Only factors of 3 are 1 and 3. You add them together, you're going to get 4, or you're going to get 2, you subtract. Okay? So it's, or negative 2s and things like that. So it's not factorable. So what you're going to do is create something that looks like junk squared equals something. You're going to create something that looks like section 5.3 or 5.4. When you had junk squared equals a number, you'd square root both sides and you want to with answers. So in order to do that, you have to do something called complete the square. There's a couple of steps to it. So here's how we do this. We start with the equation, x squared plus 10x minus 3. And the very first thing I'm going to do, besides write this down, is move C. Sometimes I have to move, when I move C, I'm adding it. Sometimes I'm subtracting it. When I move C here, what am I doing?
Adding it.
Good. So I'm adding C.
All right, I see you, Mr. Murphy.
What?
I didn't see what happened.
When you guys are writing this out, what I'd like you to do as you're starting this, when you first start these problems out, obviously you have to add 3. So in the next line, when you write it, you do x squared plus 10x blank equals 3. Put that blank in there, because you're gonna put something here in a minute. All right? You just have to figure out what that is.
Did you see too? Nope.
So after you have moved C, the very next step that you do is you take half of B. Well, what's B in this case? 10. What's half of B?
What? Wait, what? What did you do? I've had my head.
You gotta look, Michael. God, you only got one more shot.
What's half of B? 5. Okay. Square it.
Oh!
Square it.
I'm easily confused.
I can see that. That's fine. So you take half of B, so 10 divided by 2, you get 5. Square it, you get 25. Now, what you do is you take that 25 and you add it to both sides. Because when you add something to both sides of an equation, do you change the equation? No. You're keeping it balanced. So you wind up.
Oh, no. That's so clutch. You missed the best one.
What?
So now you add it to both sides. And what I want you to notice here is that you have created a perfect square on the left. What times what's 25? You have to either get 10. 5 or 5, right?
Wait. So, you take 10x divided by 2, get 5, square it, you have 25, and then you put the 10x back in?
All of the 10x stays there, yeah. What you're doing is you're taking the half, you take half of B, square it, and add it to both sides.
Okay.
Okay? What you're doing is you're creating a new value of C that creates a perfect square. That perfect square is always going to be half of B squared. Okay? In this case, your term now, well, what times what's 25? Did you have to either get 10? 5 and 5. So you wind up with a perfect square. Well, that looks like that. The quantity x plus 5 squared equals 28 by adding 25 to 3. Okay? Now, isn't that junk squared equals a number? How do you solve it? Square root. So what you're doing here is you're setting yourself up for a problem that's very easy to work with. What's the square root of junk squared? Junk. In this case, it's x plus 5. And what's the square root of 28? Very good. Plus or minus 2 root 7. I know that's where you were going, Cassie. And then what's your last part?
Add the integer.
Yeah, in this case we subtract, yeah. So you get negative 5 plus or minus 2 root 7. There's your answer. Those are your zeros. You've just factored it. Completing the square is a very easy process once you do a couple of them. Okay? Remember, the trick of completing a square is taking half of b, square it, and add it to both sides. Your value of whatever half of b is will always be the term here. Always. And in this case, it was positive 10. Half of positive 10 was plus positive 5, so it's x plus 5. When you square it, you get 25. You add 25 to both sides. Same idea here. X squared minus 16x plus 76 is 0. If we were going to sit there all day trying to figure out the factors of 76 that add together to get negative 16, we'd be doing that until we were blue in the face because there aren't any. So in this case, again, we're going to do what's called completing the square. What's your first step? Subtract 76. Good.
C.
So we move C. We wind up with x squared minus 16x plus something equals negative 76. Now, what's half of negative 16? Negative 8. Half of negative 16 is negative 8. What's negative 8 squared? 64. So we're going to add 64 to both sides. We have now created a perfect square trinomial on the left-hand side with the term what squared? What goes in the parentheses?
8.
Is it positive 8 or minus 8?
Negative 8.
Negative 8. And the reason that it's negative 8 because what was half of b? Negative 8. So your term is x minus 8 quantity squared equals negative 12. And now you're at the exact same step you were in section 5.4 when you used imaginary numbers. So you have junk squared equals a number. How do you undo the squaring?
Well, yeah. Take the square root.
Take the square root. What's the square root of negative 12?
Imaginary something, it goes somewhere.
And
2i root 3. Okay, so you have x minus 8 equals, uh-oh, I took a square root over an equal sign. Plus or minus 2i root 3. And then lastly, what do? You add the 8. Half of b, square it, add it to both sides. You can factor every single problem like this. You forget your terms. What times what's 108 to add together to get 16? You can still do it. Whatever it might be. Completing the square works for everything. Right? It's just, we don't normally show it till the end when you get to the part where you can't factor something. All right? Did you guys also notice a pattern here with the first two problems that I showed you? What was the value of a in both of these?
1.
1. It was positive 1. Which means completing these squares is only going to work when a is equal to
1.
positive 1. So if a doesn't equal to positive 1, what do you think you have to do?
Factor.
Factor it out. Very good.
Why does it only work when it's positive? Yeah, good question.
Because when you take half of b, you still have to remember that you're creating a perfect square trinomial. In order to create the perfect square trinomial, your a values are going to be 1 with this method. But in this case, the only thing you have to worry about if your a value isn't 1, make it 1. This is an equal problem. It equals 0, right? So if I divide both sides by 3 in this case, do I really change the problem? No. So if I start with 3x squared minus 6x plus 12 is 0. In this case, my value of a is 3. So divide everything by 3.
Yeah, okay.
So when you divide everything by 3, don't worry about these two guys right now, you get what? Well, x squared minus 2x plus 4 is 0. Not too bad. All right. Now what do? Let's complete the square. What's the next step?
Plus the, or subtract 4.
Subtract the 4. You have x squared minus 2x blank equals negative 4. What's half of negative 2? What's negative 1 squared?
I. Oh, I. One.
What's negative 1 times negative 1? Add 1 to both sides. Exactly.
Add 1 to both.
Yep. What's negative 1 squared? 1. So you add 1 to both sides. Remember, half of b, then square it, add that value to both sides.
Okay.
So now, what was your term going to be? What I mean by term, I mean what's in the parentheses. X minus 1, yes. You get x minus 1 quantity squared equals negative 3. Okay. Once again, you are at a problem that looked a lot like we have done with section 5.4. How do you undo squaring? Square root. So you take the square root of both sides. You get x minus 1 is, well, what's the square root of negative 3? Plus or minus, bless you, I root of 3.
Holy moly.
I was thinking square.
Okay. And then lastly, what do I have to move? The 1. So you get x equals 1 plus or minus I root 3. Okay? Completing the square is very systematic. There's no tricks to it. There's no curveball thrown in at all. It's just always half of b, square it, and add it to both sides. I really can't do anything besides that. Okay? Now, the other part of the stuff I was going to show you today is the quadratic formula, which you guys know. Do you remember the song?
Yes. That was a
Kind of. The
very
stabbing song.
depressing
I
song.
remember you guys. Go ahead, Blake.
You remember the stabbing song? Yes, sir.
So if, back to like the imaginary numbers,
Yeah.
like all that, if it's the 0, how is that shown on a graph?
What do you mean? Oh, imaginary? There's an imaginary plane that you can plot. I'm plotting it right now. No, there is. We just don't spend a lot of time plotting imaginary. It's not a big skill that you can do. I'll show you guys on Monday when everybody's here. It's very easy. There's nothing to it. But now the song for quadratic formula. You ready?
Yeah.
No. X equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2. Remember that one?
No.
All right, let's sing it again. Ready? Yes, sir.
Oh, so you just did that.
A substitute saying to us as well the regular school meeting.
Oh, really? I haven't heard that version of it, but
It's Christmas season.
yeah, I know.
That's
Halloween's
second.
over. Yes, sir.
Actually, I saw a Christmas commercial at Best Buy.
Did you really?
And then, yeah, last night. And then, who came up? Who like founded this one? Like,
Mr.
what's the-
Quadratic.
False.
That is false. I don't remember.
Albert.
Anyway,
Like, what do you have to do to like find? Is this just guessing and checking, or?
They just have fun making up.
anyway,
Do it right now.
what happens is, you guys, what do these A, B's, and C's stand for? Remember, the A, B's, and C's are your ax squared plus bx plus c. These are all coefficients. Also, when can you use quadratic formula?
When x is 1 positive.
No, it doesn't matter.
Oh wait, what?
When x is squared. As long as you have an x squared trinomial, you can use quadratic.
What did we just do?
That's completely square. Now, the one part of the quadratic formula that I wanted to make sure you guys understand is what's called the discriminant. Now, just to touch on what the discriminant is, the discriminant is the junk underneath the radical. It's the b squared minus 4ac. What the discriminant allows you to be able to do, the discriminant will tell you the number and type of solutions you're going to have. For example, if the discriminant, b squared minus 4ac, if it happens to be positive, you have 2 real answers. If it is equal to 0, you have 1 real answer. And if it is negative, you have 2 imaginary answers. That basically is all the discriminant does. Okay? If the discriminant is positive, 2 real. If it is 0, 1 real. And if it is negative, you have 2 imaginary. Because what happens when you have a negative underneath the square root? You get some imaginary number. Okay? That's why that works. So, if it's negative, you have 2 imaginary answers. If it is positive, you have 2 real answers. And if it is 0, you have 1 real answer. Remember, if it's equal to 0, that means the parabola lies on the x-axis. It only touches it at one spot. Questions?
Is that all we're doing today?
That's all we're doing.
Oh.
Do those.
Oh.
This is odds for all of those. Okay? It's already uploaded on the website for that. Yes, ma'am. About the discriminant? Sure.
We get out of here.
10:04.
10:04.
10:05?
Yeah.
Yeah.
-1.
Plus 1. Squared.
-2. Plus 1
Divided by.
squared.
10:05 plus the square root.
Divided by gym class.
Remember, you don't have this written down. X equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac.
And they make
Oh,
you,
so
they make you memorize that in math school.
in math school, yes, we had to memorize that.
I don't know.
Alright, can I?
Are you good? Can I blow it back up?
No, oh yeah, we'll blow that back up.
The page 295 is
Oh.
included.
Yeah. Those are just using quadratic formula and finding the script. How many real solutions do you have? That kind of junk.
Mr. Murphy, in fear of being late, I did not grab my book.